Hello everyone, Luciano Oliveira Lawyers. Today is Sunday, May 17th. It's 3:35 Rio de Janeiro time. We are starting one more live stream late for a few minutes. I apologize. And as always, if you're here with us, you have a priority to have a subject of your interest discussed live. If there are no subjects chosen by the participants, then I typically go to a backlog of questions and I'm going to pick some topics randomly to discuss. And with that, let's take a look at the news. Let's see what's going on in Brazil. And the main headline is talking about Vorcaro. Vorcaro, he was the owner of Bank Master, and Bank Master went bankrupt. And that by itself, it's big news in Brazil because there is a super regulation of banks in Brazil. And banks failing in Brazil is something extremely rare. And another distinction is that in Brazil, we don't have as many regional banks as it is common, for instance, in the United States. So because of that, every time there is a bank like failing in Brazil, that's typically big news. But on top of that, Vorcaro, and you see here the name of Vorcaro in the main headline. So the owner of the bankrupt bank master, he would have like connections through the different levels and the different components of the Brazilian government. So he was well connected to the presidency. He was well connected to governors. He was well connected to Congress people, and even to the Supreme Court through a couple of justices that were working along with him. And here, you see, like, to the right side of the main headline, you see Justice Alexandre de Moraes, and his wife, she had a contract for services around 130 million reais, if I'm not mistaken. Like, it has been a while since I saw the number. But it was like a number, very difficult to explain from any type of, perspective or reality, right? So, it's also interesting that he had the connections, to both sides of the political spectrum. Something else that is quite new, it's another headline, this one over here. It was discovered that Vorcaro was actually sponsoring a movie about former President Jair Bolsonaro, right? So very interesting that Vorcaro would have very strong connections, again, to both sides of the aisle. And that's very unfortunate, right? Like, I mean, it looks like the more they investigate, the broader, the network is, but maybe that's an upside, right? Like, you find out who are the ones who were entangled with, this Vorcaro and Bank Master, if you will. Let's see what else. We have sports. Neymar, many of you probably know about Neymar. Like, Neymar is a major Brazilian soccer player, and but he has faced many challenges, inside and outside of the soccer field, and it looks like he's not gonna go to the World Cup, and as you may imagine, right, like, he's recognized probably as, if not the best a soccer player of nowadays, maybe one of the best ones, but because of all the issues that he keeps presenting, in terms of his discipline, in terms of keeping himself fit, for total competitions, challenges on the personal field as well. There was a really large corruption scandal related to taxes, like unpaid taxes. So that's something else that is very important to Brazilians, as you may imagine. All right, let's take a look at Remax Nomad States. Remax Nomad States is a partner of our firm. They've been delivering what they promise, which is our motto here at the firm, right? Like, I mean, our idea of success is like to deliver what we sell, what we promise, right? It shouldn't be a rocket science, but unfortunately, many times in Brazil, you're gonna deal with service providers that are not gonna, do what they say they would do. So, Remax Nomad States, they've been at satisfaction for many of our clients, not only in Rio de Janeiro, but across the country. There are transactions, right, as we speak, through this real estate agency in Salvador, Bahia, Fortaleza, Ceará, São Paulo, and Florianópolis, on top of Rio de Janeiro, of course. So if you needed their help, just take a note of their contact information. And let's check now our chat and see if we have any participation so far. We have Marisa Navas. Que bom vê-la, Marisa e Ricardo. Espero que estejam bem, aproveitando o domingo. Ótimo domingo para vocês também e obrigado pelo apoio. General Principal, boa tarde, senhor Oliveira. Good afternoon, General Principal. Feliz domingo. Hope everything is well. Happy Sunday to you as well, General Principal. And let us know where you are right now. Are you in Brazil or are you back home, General Principal? All right, let's take a look at some of the topics in our backlog. Okay, so about real estate, price levels, trends, if it is a good idea to buy or not in Brazil. Okay, yeah, so I'm gonna, like, instead of talking about so many different aspects of buying a property in Brazil, I'm gonna talk about one that I think it should be actually the first question that someone should ask themselves when they are considering buying a property in Brazil, right? And this question is why they're buying and what is the purpose. And in my experience, like those who are gonna really make the most out of this acquisition are gonna be the ones with some personal connection to the country. Every now and then we're gonna have, small real estate investors saying that they want to diversify because they think the United States is gonna crash. They have something in Europe, now they want to kind of hedge their investments and they want to invest in Brazil. And typically my answer is, like Brazil has a lot of friction in terms of the acquisition, and not only in terms of the acquisition, but in terms of the exit as well. So meaning like when you're going to exit the market, sell your property, take this money potentially abroad, there's so much friction that in my opinion, like any potential financial gains, they should be secondary, right? Like, I mean, of course, you understand it is important. Everybody want to buy something and at least not lose money, right? Like, I mean, when we're talking about real estate. So for Brazil, when you have a personal connection, when you're going to derive something on top of financials, like, personal satisfaction, because now you have a property in another country, maybe you have a history of traveling to Brazil on a certain basis. All of those things, they are gonna be they are gonna mean like a reward that is gonna go beyond just financials. So these are the best case scenarios for people buying in Brazil. And if that's your case, like, I mean, it's typically a good decision to buy real estate in Brazil. But very surprising to me, some people that say, well, you know what, like, I mean, I know Brazil is one of the top 10 largest economies in the globe. And I want to invest for, to diversify my capital. And then I say, listen, if you have like a really meaningful portfolio, like of, I don't know, 10, 20, 30 properties, yes, it may make sense to invest in Brazil, even if you don't have like a personal connection. But if you just have like two or three properties, something that I saw happening before, I don't think Brazil should be your next bet because of, again, all of the friction involved in buying a real estate, in managing real estate, and in exiting Brazil. And but again, it's just a nature of our society, the nature of how real estate works. In Brazil, there is a lot of bureaucracy, a lot of friction from a taxation and financial perspective. But if you are getting the right resources, particularly human resources, you can and you will reduce a lot of the burden on you as the owner. Okay, just make sure you understand that there is a price tag to that. For instance, when people buy real estate in Brazil, they have basically two options. They could hire a service like ours that's going to handle A to Z, and basically they're just going to need to sign things and be in touch with us, provide documents, or you're going to potentially spend several dozens of hours interacting with the realtor, trying to understand what's going on. This on top of risk, right? Risk is another component that should be factored into your decision process. All right, so it's always like a complex answer, and the answer is going to be different depending on your profile and what you're trying to accomplish in Brazil. I hope that was helpful. General principle, question about the real estate visa route, specifically the period between acquiring the property and acquiring the CRNM. Is it true you need the CRNM to set up utilities? General principle, typically yes. And this is going to vary, like depending on the state, depending on the city, and even within the same city, is going to depend on who's handling your requirement. In Rio de Janeiro, for instance, you could set up utilities online, and you could set up utilities in person. So for our clients, when they don't have the CRNM yet, sometimes we are able to get them the utility accounts opened by sending someone from our office and handling those procedures like in person. Another case which we don't really like to do it is more like for some clients who have a longer term relationship with us. We may set up a temporary account on our name, right? And we can keep the utility account set just for the purpose of keeping electricity, internet working until they get the CRNM. Another approach which works quite well is to have like a representative. So let's say if you buy a property, and by the way, answering about the timeline, From the moment you close, typically you're gonna have this R&M card in about 4 to 5 months in average. So in this meantime, yes, you're gonna need utility set, something that works quite well across the country, not just like in Rio de Janeiro, São Paulo, or Florianopolis, is to use like a representative. So let's say if you're buying a property, and many people, they have someone, maybe a friend in the town, or they have like a relative, maybe sometimes they have a personal connection to someone, like a romantic connection. They are going to use this representative as the account holder, even though the account is going to be running on their name, right? So the power company, for instance, they're going to use the paperwork for the representative in order to set the account up, okay? And in some cities, not consistently, difficult to say, listen, the city is 100% sure you're going to get it, but many times you are able to get a utility set even with a passport, okay? As long as you have the CPF, you have the paperwork showing that the property was registered on your name, and so on. Interesting question, General Principal. If so, how does one navigate turning on utilities during this 1 to 2 months waiting for the CRNM? Also, to answer your question, I'm currently in the US, but planning to come down next month. Thank you for sharing, General Principal. And yes, so that's what we were discussing. Another type of situation, like for some cities that we know that transferring the utilities is going to be a problem, we kind of work language in the purchase agreement, given the buyer a longer time window to get the new account set, okay? Because in theory, even though the property was transferred, the utility company, they are not going to get notice of the transaction typically, meaning that the problem is not that you need to rush and get your own accounts. It is more a matter of the seller wanting you to get your own accounts. But guess what? If you are paying the bills on time, if you send in the receipts to the sellers, many times the sellers are going to be amenable to waiting some time until you are able to get the utilities on your name. And another example, General Principal, that I think is going to show that it's not necessarily a problem. We have a substantial percentage of buyers that we assist with a real estate acquisition in Brazil that never get an R&M card. Okay, so the R&M card, like the Brazilian ID for foreign citizens, is not actually for everyone. We have many people who are going to buy the property and they say, listen, I have no interest in becoming a resident in Brazil, particularly because of the potential taxation effects, right? The taxation effect, it doesn't come from the ownership. It comes actually from either an intent of establishing yourself on a more permanent basis in Brazil, or when you exceed the 183 days in a given year on a rolling basis, right? Never calendar year. It's always a moving bracket. I like to joke, trying to catch you. If you exceed 183 days, and it doesn't need to be consecutive, we're just talking 183 days in general, in any given 365, then guess what? You're going to be a tax resident, right? But many people, they say, listen, the less risk I have, to become a tax resident, the better. I don't want the R&M. I just want to have a property in Brazil for me to be able to enjoy Brazil. Most people like twice a year, and for not more than 3 months. And if that's the case, guess what? You don't need the R&M, and you should still be able to get your utility set. and it may take some more effort, a little bit more work with the power companies. But listen, we don't have any cases here in the firm in which we were never, able to get the utilities set for the foreign citizens. So it's typically a matter of, trying different techniques, different approaches to eventually get you the utility bill. But yes, that's an important perspective. Brazil is very formalistic. I know how it works in the U.S. In the U.S. is, many times you set up utilities by just, emailing something and you email something or speak with a representative over the phone, and they make it very easy. Sometimes you send some deposit. It could be $50, $100. I don't know, but it is extremely easier to get utility accounts in the U.S. Than it is in Brazil. That's for sure. All right, let's see what else we have. Okay, we have this question here about the stable union. Okay, is it true that stable union is no longer working for permanent residency applications in Brazil? And that's not true. That's not true. Actually, in Brazil, as of today, you could either, and there are other routes, of course, right? But just talking about união estável or stable union or, the civil law, common law marriage, right? Or civil union, like all of those things, they are kind of, they have similar meaning, at least from the Brazilian perspective. And yes, you can get it, through marriage, like the formal marriage with a marriage certificate. But you can also get it if you have, the so-called união estável, as long as you have documents to back up the common law marriage, right? The união estável. And what are the documents? That's typically, the next question. So Brazil is going to typically refuse to grant you permanent residency unless you have some type of, governmental paperwork supporting the common law marriage. Okay, so in Brazil, like when you have união estável, there are two different routes for you to formalize the união estável. One is going to be through a court, which is very rare for people to pick just because it's much more time-consuming and more costly. And this is the strongest one you can have, right? And then there is a second route, which is like when you go to a registry, and through the registry, you get a deed of união estável issued. And this is also solid, but when you use the cartório deed route, you're gonna need to show additional paperwork like financial papers showing the names of both parties. Naturally, you're gonna need like an address in which the Polícia Federal, the federal police, could eventually visit you on a random basis, right? Like they don't give you a heads up ahead of time. But yes, and this question may be because of like a fraud. Like there was a lot of fraud up to June of last year, and then the Brazilian Federal Police, they set up an operation like to chase fraudsters, lawyers assisting those fraudsters, and so on. And like they changed the procedure to make application for permanent residency through união estável much more difficult, exactly to try to reduce the level of fraud. Okay, but it is still available. It's not over. It's not over, and we always have at any given time we have at least a few clients applying for permanent residency based on união estável. Okay, so even as of today, we should have a few I don't know how many, but we do have a few clients applying and securing the permanent residency through União Estável. All right, we have a Turing Mitchell. Boa tarde. I did a consultation with your firm, April the 27th. I will start my retirement application with you when I come to Rio in October. All right, Turing, glad to hear it. You probably met with Caroline, I would assume. Was that the case, Turing? And how was the consultation? Was the consultation good? A challenge we have here, just like thinking aloud, is like to coordinate all the knowledge we have in this field and in Brazil, and I guess everywhere else, like the United States is another challenging immigration framework. But in Brazil, one of the challenges we have is that like part of the knowledge is gonna apply nationally, meaning that it does not matter where you are applying. The dynamics are gonna be the same. However, when it gets to the stage of applying for the RNM card, this stage in particular, it's gonna depend on the federal police station in which you are applying. Okay, and so many times we get this knowledge through our analysts, like the folks that actually work with you on the application, and then we need to get this knowledge back to us, including myself. I do take some consultations for immigration, and then we have Caroline as well, who nowadays she takes, I think, most of our immigration consultations, right? So there are, some challenges in terms of connecting all this information, but that's something that we spend, time and energy in order to keep everyone here at the firm up to date. All right, let's see what else we have. All right, so this one is interesting. It's talking about, exiting a real estate transaction in Brazil, right? Like it's kind of connected to what we were saying. Whenever people are shopping for properties in Brazil, my typical advice is for you to try to stick to those neighborhoods that are better known by foreign citizens, because guess what? When it's time for you to sell your property, you're gonna have not only the Brazilian, segment to buy your property, but also potential foreign citizens. Okay, now if you're gonna pick a city that nobody knows about, guess what? You're gonna be kind of, the only foreign citizen, like, spending money over there. So when it's time to sell the property, guess what? Now you have, like a smaller size base of potential prospective buyers for your property. Okay, and this happens a lot in Rio de Janeiro. Is very interesting, I think, because it doesn't cease to amaze me, like the differences in exit dynamic when it comes to finding the buyers. So Rio de Janeiro is a very unique state from so many perspectives, but one of the main upsides of Rio de Janeiro is the natural beauty. Natural beauty is throughout the state. Is not only the coastal area, but also if you go inner state, like if you go to the countryside, you're gonna find amazing cities, right? And I'm sure some of you have heard about many of them, right? Not only like Teresópolis, Petrópolis, right? There are many amazing cities like in inner Rio de Janeiro. Now, when you start to deviate from those better known destinations, you're gonna face this reality that Brazilians in average, right? Like, I mean, of course, there are many rich millionaire, billionaire Brazilians, but they are more like the exception. The vast majority of Brazilians, they are not gonna be as well uh, uh, developed from a financial perspective. And so when you try to sell your property, if you're trying to sell a property in a market that you only have Brazilians, many times you're going to need to rely on bank finance for that particular buyer to buy the property from you. And, so you are reducing even further the number of prospective buyers you could have, because now you don't have foreign citizens. Now you're going to have like Brazilians who are going to need to qualify for a bank loan. And this is going to hurt typically your effort to sell a property. Many times you're going to need, to sell for less than you would like to. Okay. Now, if you are buying in those, famous areas of Rio de Janeiro, and I'm sure you guys know what I'm talking about over here. There is Copacabana, Ipanema, Leblon, Barra da Tijuca, Recreio. It could be even like, Rio de Janeiro downtown, Porto Maravilha, right? There are so many places that are well known by foreign citizens. And guess what? Whenever you buy a property and you try to sell this property down the line, typically you're not going to have an issue to find another buyer. Very interesting that here at the firm, many times, we're going to have a contract in which the buyer, typically our client, is going to be a foreign citizen. And guess what? The seller is going to be a foreign citizen as well, especially in Rio de Janeiro for, really high amount properties, okay? And just because I spoke about high amount properties, another challenge we have in Rio is that we work with currency exchange banks. Currency exchange banks, because of regulation by the Brazilian Central Bank, they needed to run a thorough due diligence on the parties involved. And in Rio de Janeiro, guess what? There is a large number of politicians involved in corruption scandals operating in the high-end real estate market, right? And it's not uncommon that we're going to have a client, they're going to find a property, they're going to fall in love, and then we're going to need, to review the situation with the client to see if they are going to move forward or not, despite the seller being entangled in like corruption activity, right? For sure, that's not something that we handle in our kind of, standard service. But for some very premium properties and very premium and unique properties, we may structure a way to shield the client from all the mess on the seller side, right? Like, I mean, the mindset here is like, I'm buying a property, I'm not buying a relationship with the seller, and guess what? The seller is involved in corruption, right? So I'm surely not trusting the seller at any level, and then we're gonna need to kind of develop a much more complex purchase framework, many times involving the court, right? We're going to ask an authorization from the court to have a judicial separate bank account for the payment to be provided. We're going to need like an approval from a public attorney. So we bring like everybody together to make a transaction like this to work. And typically, we are able to get the transaction done, and the fund is typically routed, like to the government. Like for those, there are many sellers in Rio de Janeiro, right? Just like another piece of information for you to understand the challenge. They have this property unavailable for sale exactly because of the corruption charge, right? So it's not like we are making this go through and still paying the seller. No, that's not what happens typically. We're going to be paying typically a court. The court is going to hold the money, and then the seller is going to figure it out with the court if they're going to retrieve part of the money or if they're not going to retrieve any money at all. Okay, but somewhat, unfortunately, somewhat common in Rio de Janeiro. All right. General principle, can you pick which city you schedule your appointment with Polícia Federal for the CRNM in any city, or do they have assigned jurisdiction? Great question, General Principal. And typically, they are more flexible for some tracks than others. For instance, digital nomad. Okay, digital nomad, the real estate investor visa, they are typically a little bit more flexible. Now, if you're doing the marriage or união estável, they are not flexible at all. And actually, they give you a heads up that if you're not picking the correct jurisdiction, they could pursue criminal charges against you, right? Like for fraudulent representation. It gotta be in the same jurisdiction where you live. That's for the marriage and união estável track. Now, again, for digital nomad, the threshold is much lower in terms of binding jurisdiction. So, for digital nomad, I think pretty much anything goes, okay? And then you have other stuff in between. Marriage and união estável, these are the two ones. Is actually marriage, união estável, and childbirth. Those are the three ones that jurisdiction is going to be absolutely binding. Digital nomad, anything goes. And then in between, you're going to have, all the other types of visas and residencies. That was an interesting question. Matt Gaines, boa tarde, Matt and Adrian. Good to see you guys over here. Oi, Dr. Luciano. To General Principal's question, if my spouse is a Brazilian citizen, the utilities can be put in spouse's name if I don't yet have CRNM. Correct, Matt. That's absolutely the case. So if there is a Brazilian spouse, the Brazilian spouse is more than welcome to be the representative for the utility bill. Okay, there is no requirement that both names are gonna show up. Even though down the line, yes, it would be a good idea to have both names, because then both of you would be able to use the utility bill, right, like as a proof of residence for many legal purposes. But yes, you would be more than welcome, Matt, to have the Brazilian partner as the account owner in Brazil. And that, like when you have a spouse, it's even easier and faster. Now, in many cases, we have clients who don't have a Brazilian spouse, but they have either like a romantic partner or even just like a regular friend who's going to volunteer to show up as the account holder. And in this case, sometimes we may need to set a contract to explain the relationship between this account holder and the owner. Sometimes we do need to present this document, sometimes we don't. Again, it depends on the city, state, and even like the person at the power company handling the requirement. But, good news is that if you have a Brazilian spouse, you're good. You're not going to face any issues. And it's very common, for couples in which there is a Brazilian and a U.S. citizen, for the Brazilian to figure out as the account holder. Interesting question, Matt. All right, let's see what else we have over here. All right, and I'm gonna adapt is a different point, but I'm gonna adapt is about taxation, and people always complain, right? So now I'm the part. I'm not talking about this question in particular. I'm more talking about the need for you to file taxes in Brazil when you become like a resident in Brazil, according to certain criteria. and it's somewhat difficult for you to find a good professional to assist you with the tax filing. So we are developing this structure as we speak. We do have, some clients, I don't know, maybe a few dozens of clients for who we actually file the taxes, more on a pilot basis. And our goal is to start offering this service as of 2027. So what we are doing, we're keeping like a list of interested clients and parties, and potentially we're targeting like November of 2026. We're gonna start to we're gonna start advertising or explaining like how we're gonna charge for the services. And for many, or maybe for most, for instance, you will need to do like a monthly filing, which is called Carnê Leão, right? Or Carnê is like a payment coupon, a Leão is like lion, okay? It's the exact translation. The lion payment coupon that you need to file on a monthly basis. And then there is also like an annual filing that is going to consolidate all the monthly filings that you have along the way. And our idea is to provide all the services that, for instance, would need in Brazil. Ideally, on a more like how can I say, on a easier basis, right? Like typically, the relationship with accountants, bookkeepers is kind of frustrating to foreign citizens, to say the least. But our idea is to have a service that's going to be reliable in terms of getting you the answers that you need for your filings and so on. Now, this service would be for the Brazilian side, like we don't have the capability of filing in the US. But what we're going to have is like a couple of options, right? We're going to have like a cheaper option for filing in the US. A filer in the US who knows how to deal with Brazilian stuff, because let's say if you are now living in Brazil, maybe you bought like a couple of properties and you're living in one property and you're renting out the other one. So your accountant in the US, they also should know how to enter that information into your US return, right? So we're gonna for that front, we're gonna have a couple of options. They are gonna be referrals. They are not gonna be provided by us. There's going to be one on the cheaper side, like for more straightforward types of situations. And then we're going to have like a US law firm that specializes in taxation, and they are going to handle more advanced cases at a substantially higher fee as well, right? That would be for more like for high net worth individuals. I guess for most people, the cheaper option would be a better match. But that's some sharing I wanna something I wanted to share with you about the taxation side. This service that we are planning to launch around November, and again we are actually serving a few clients already as we speak, more as a pilot to understand like the resources needed, the challenges that we face, and everything else that we are gonna need to address when we get to November. All right, Matt, for the R&M Federal Police appointment, if a client is not near one of your offices for support at the appointment, can you refer us to someone locally? We will be settling in Rio Grande do Sul. Matt, yes, something we can do is like there is a network of Brazilian attorneys, like we call it in Portuguese, correspondente, right? But it means like if we need someone to do something physically in another location, we kind of check those databases. We could potentially find someone over there and have this person assigned to go with you to the appointment, right? And the only challenge is that in Brazil, Even like if the attorney says, they're fluent in English, sometimes they are not as fluent as you would like this person to be. So sometimes is a little bit frustrating to the client. But yes, that's something we could, search for and then share directly with you, right? Is not something that's going to be included in our service. That's something you're going to naturally need to pay directly to that individual. Now, if you have our support, Matt, and your spouse, let's assume if your spouse speaks Portuguese, with our remote support, that's something that works, for most of our clients. But I understand, like, different people, they have a different levels of comfort in terms of attending like those important appointments. And yes, if you need someone, we could potentially try to find a local attorney who speaks English and then put this person in touch with you, so this person would go to the appointment with you. Another challenge we have is that, many times we are able to find an attorney, but not like an attorney specializing in immigration. There are less immigration attorneys capable of servicing foreign citizens in English than you would assume. So sometimes it's more like, an attorney just should be on your side and be able to communicate in both Portuguese or English. All right, Matt? But yes, that's something we can help you find when the time comes. Turing, after I apply for retirement visa, can I travel outside of Brazil, or do I have to wait until I get the retirement visa? Turing, listen, the way we recommend our clients is for them to wait. So yes, you have to wait, like whenever you are in the country, you have an application going on. We typically recommend you to stay in country to avoid traveling abroad. And most of the time, if you have to travel abroad, you are fine, but sometimes you are not. Sometimes you have trouble coming back for one reason or the other. So we typically tell our clients, yes, you need to stay grounded for the time being, but if something happens, let's say you have a family situation, you need to go back to the US for, an unavoidable reason, then we're going to work with you to minimize the chances of non-approval and trouble at the border when returning to Brazil. Okay, but we do have clients who would leave, even though we try to avoid, because there are many components that are going to be impacted by your trip abroad. And sometimes it's just difficult for us to handle all the what ifs, right? So much better to just stay in the country until you have your residency, and then guess what, then you're free to leave and come back to Brazil as many times as you want. Like we have some clients, they are not the norm, they are the exception, of course, but we have clients who basically go to the US and come back to Brazil every single month, and they have no issues. But my recommendation is, go do that after you have your paperwork. After you have your paperwork, you have nothing to be concerned with, So my recommendation, and that's something sometimes, foreign citizens, particularly from the United States, they could be a little more understanding of the immigration journey, but I also comprehend, different countries, different realities, different expectations. But when you are applying, right, like for immigration, particularly the immigration officers, the immigration infrastructure, like they think themselves as doing you a favor. Of course, it's not a favor. You're paying things, you're going to pay taxes, right? I would say it's more like an exchange. But like immigration in general, they think like they're doing you a favor. The same thing with the United States nowadays, right? In the U.S. as of today, the U.S. immigration thinks like, you know what, like if you get the opportunity to come to the U.S., you should be pretty happy and not bother us at all, right? So Brazil is not exactly like the United States, but the point here is that I don't think like you should be traveling around during your application, if that makes sense, Turing. I hope that was helpful. All right, let's see what else we have. All right, this is about banks. That's something we speak here kind of often. Like we work with 4 banks in Brazil. We have a formal partnership, right? Like when I say we work with banks, I mean that we have a formal legal partnership with 4 banks in Brazil. And these are the banks that you typically work with when you work with us. We have a variety because certain situations are going to work better with a certain bank. So by having 4 different banks in our portfolio, we are typically able to get you a good match in terms of service. And you know, for those of you who want to know who the banks are Rendimento, they are Moneycorp, they are Topazio, and they are Brasa Bank. Okay, these are the 4 banks we partner with, and they're very solid in the Brazilian market. They have a great reputation, and so far they've been able to take good care of our clients. A good thing about these formal relationships we have is that we typically work within the back office of the bank. So we are able to, handle your documents. We are able to chase the bank employees when things are not moving as they should, right? So these are the 4 banks we work with. And again, because it's a legal partnership we have with those banks, we are able to move many things faster than they would when you're dealing with those banks by yourself. All right. Okay. It looks like we are arriving at the end of today's live stream. I want to thank you for showing up. I understand it is a Sunday, and I want to say thank you for the interesting questions. I want to let you know that our next live stream is going to be on Wednesday. And on Wednesdays, we're going to meet at an early time. We meet at 12:30 Rio de Janeiro time. So if there are any questions that you forgot to ask or that, show up in your head after this live stream, you can come back on Wednesday and have them discussed live. Okay, so thank you again. Wishing you guys a blessed rest of your Sunday and see you again.